Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Here Be Dragons. I am your host, Stephen Stark, and joining me this week is, I guess, we're friends now, Dan. We've had conversations outside the context that we met.
Mm-hmm.
We've had some one-on-ones. I would say you're my friend now, not just like my internet friend.
For sure. Yeah, we've not had the pleasure of meeting in real life, but I consider you certainly part of my circle.
Right, for sure. Well, I'm really happy to have you on HBD for I Know That Nerd this week. But I also want to make sure right at the top we give a shout out to your mom, Julia Simpson, in the chat. Hello, Mom. Happy Mothering Day. You raised quite a fine young man here. He's a good guy. Good guy.
Oh, she's suffered for a long time, really, to be honest, to raise me right.
Well, our mothers can bond in the chat over what we were like as teenagers, I'm sure.
Yeah, I hope they don't too much, but
we might be exposing ourselves a little bit. But anyway, yeah. Dan, welcome back to the channel. You've been a guest a couple of times in the past, but today we are just gonna, we're just gonna have this riff style conversation where we get to know each other. Mostly, though everybody watching gets to know you, because you kind of have gained some notoriety. I mean, a little bit.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit, just a little bit. I'm starting to get known in Tolkien circles a little bit, at least. Nobody in A Song of Ice and Fire fandom really knows me, apart from a few people, but but that's not what I do. I do Tolkien, as you know. And yeah, our channel's continuing to grow, and I'm continuing to work hard at it, and I really want to make it a success long term. I love doing it. I absolutely love doing it. And it's something that has come about primarily because of the pandemic and the situation in the world in the last year and what's happened in my kind of day-to-day job. And I've just had a lot more free time, and I've put that into the channel, and it's great. I'm loving it.
Well, I got to say, I love what you're doing over there. I mean, again, I consider us friends, just without context, but I really love what you're doing with your channel specifically, because there are a lot of great Tolkien content creators in the YouTube space, but none of them are doing what you're doing, which I think is why you've had such success, because you've been doing it for what, about a year now?
I started in July, actually, I think, or maybe the end of June. So yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And you weren't going to bring it up, so I will. You crossed 2,000 subscribers today.
Today, yes.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah, it's another milestone on the road, really.
It's not the biggest one for sure, but still, 2,000 is nothing to sneeze at.
1,000 was a big one. 1,000 was it felt like a big moment.
I'll let you know how it feels for me when I get there.
It felt like the beginning of the end of the beginning, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, it really does, actually.
And from there, I've talked to much bigger YouTubers about this, and they all say, once you get to that point, it kind of, you feel the snowball effect start to take place, and YouTube starts to help you more. People talk about the algorithm and stuff, and it's this nebulous thing that no one really understands. But certainly, the more you grow, the more you grow.
Right.
And yeah, it's exciting, actually, especially with things on the horizon for the Tolkien fandom. I don't want to sound too arrogant about it all. So, but yeah, it's exciting for sure.
Yeah, well, and again, but I think part of the reason you're experiencing that success is because of the specific content that you are creating. Like, you can look up a video about the Silmarillion, and it's either going to be very shallow in what it in its detail, or it's going to be how many hours long. We don't, Whereas you've done the right thing. You've cut it up into these digestible pieces, each chapter. Read a chapter, watch the Dan video. Or in some chapters, it's 2 videos even. But And Tolkien, for all of his imagination and ability, is not known for being easy to read, and the Silmarillion probably even less so.
Yes,
I just really appreciate the way you can always cut to the heart of what's being said, and you bring forward, knowing the whole story. You can say, pay attention to this person; they're going to be important later. I love what you do over there, man. I really do.
Yeah, that's a big thing, is kind of crossing the boundaries between the chapters and drawing the links between the chapters, because the Silmarillion is a story that kind of it takes place over thousands of years, and the narrative is like from 100 miles in the air, and you kind of have this like top-down view of what's happening in the story, and the way the story is structured, it's got these little plot points that are scarcely mentioned in this like epic scale narrative, and you can easily forget things. And it's a book that also it scarcely has a sentence in it that doesn't contain a proper noun. So Tolkien just throws names at you constantly in this book, and so it requires some context, and it requires rereading. Honestly, I don't know I've never met somebody that's read the Silmarillion first time and understood it perfectly. And I've had conversations with Tolkien scholars about this, and it's just it's a difficult book for that reason. It's not a difficult book in the same way that other books are difficult. It's difficult because it's weird and it's unique, and basically it's mainly the name thing. And we did an interview on my channel with a well-known Tolkien scholar and author a while back, and he made the point, just when you read it for the first time, just ignore all the names and just let them wash over you, and just take in the story and the feel of it. And then when you want to reread it in the future, you can figure out who all these names are. But yeah, it's a wonderful book. It's unique, and it is the reason why The Lord of the Rings is so enduring, because the Silmarillion it's the mythology that Tolkien was writing over decades and decades, and it was published posthumously by his son, who took an earlier version and then added in later segments that were relevant to The Lord of the Rings. That was the version that we got. But that was just one version of the story that could have been potentially published.
Right.
So that's why go ahead.
But, be that as it may, I agree. It's a fantastic book. I have read it 20 years ago or something. And I had some of that problem where the names just bombard you so much. But like George R.R. Martin does the same thing, as somebody pointed out. I think it was my mom pointed out that George and Tolkien both love to drop names, so many characters, but I still really enjoyed the story. Like that's where you get Beren and Luthien, and which is one of the when you know the story behind it, it's just much more beautiful. So was it? I assume it was Lord of the Rings that got you first, though.
Well, it was The Hobbit first when I was 6 years old. I was very, very young. My father read it to me, my real father, and I think almost straight away after I finished reading it with him, I read it for myself. So I took the book off him and read it myself. And I think it was probably one of the very first books that I had ever read that was a full novel with chapters, and I was particularly young. It's not like I was a child genius or something that was able to pick up these books. I just seemed to connect with it and understand it very early. I think a lot of people have a similar experience with The Hobbit. And it wasn't long before we moved on to The Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings I read when I was 8-ish, something like that, 7, 8. And again, like I'm no child genius or anything. I was a bright kid, but I wasn't a genius in that way. I just I just really connected with this story. And The Lord of the Rings I read for the first time at that age, and it was the same thing. My dad read it to me first, and then and then I read it straight away afterwards, and then I read it straight away again after that, and then I read it again. And then it became something that I would revisit every so often and read it again. And I was reading other things at the same time. I would have multiple books on the go, and one of them would be Lord of the Rings. So I was obsessed.
So one of the things I've been doing I Know That Nerd for a while, and I've had many, many guests, and one of the early questions is always, so when did you know you were a nerd? I think we just covered that, though.
Yeah, I mean, if I didn't already know, I definitely knew a few times after reading The Lord of the Rings repeatedly. At some level, being a nerd, I think, is obsession. That's part of what goes into one version of the definition of what a nerd is.
Yeah, I can't remember who said it, but somebody said being a nerd isn't about what you love; it's about how you love it.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know who said that either, but that's definitely that is a freak.
I mean, good friend Helen, you are correct.
Yes, Helen identified that fact before we ever, talked face to face. I met her through her channel. I was a fan. I watched her channel, and I used to leave the more interesting comments that Helen would be stumped by or intrigued by, and she found it interesting enough that we became friends. That I had clearly read these books from cover to cover many times, and we connected on that. And she's become a really, really close friend.
Right. Helen, good friend of the channel. She's been on I Know That Nerd in the past, so you can go look that one up if you want. If you need to know who the clueless fangirl Helen is, we had a good conversation. I'll just always remember Clueless, y'all. And
that was effectively how we met as well, because I was already friends with her through Twitter, I think, at that point, if I'm remembering correctly, and she was on this channel, and I knew who you were, but I don't think I'd really watched you much. And I think what happened, if I remember correctly, is she referred to me in the chat by my first name, and you didn't know who I was at that point, so you were stumped by it. And then we became friends afterwards, later.
Right. Yeah. I need to get you in on a D&D game sometime. That'll be a good time. You know what? I'm going to segue that into D&D, a game I love. A game I've heard you play and enjoy.
I've not spent as much time with it as you have, but it certainly is something that's close to my heart as well.
Look, very few people have spent as much time with it as I have. Very few.
I was on a podcast recently with another Lord of the Rings YouTuber called The Philosopher's Games, and I mentioned you actually. Gave you a little plug because I think we were talking about video games, and my connection to D&D comes through video games, which I know we'll probably get onto later on.
We will, I'm sure.
But I got very obsessed with computer role-playing games at some point as another obsession. It was a little bit later. It was probably more into my teens. And it was sort of the third generation D&D generation stuff that was connected to that. And I played AD&D games as well, based games as well, CRPGs, and then later I played D&D probably early 20s, I think was when I first came to it, something like that. So I came to it slightly late. I would have loved to have played more when I was a kid. If I'd have had a group, I would have loved it.
I mean,
I'm sure, but
as somebody who's played since the early 80s, there is no better time to have started playing than within the last few years. I mean, those of us who lived through the Satanic Panic and were still playing it back then and all of that stuff, like some of those people can have this sort of ownership of the hobby and they'll look down their nose at some of the newer people. But the thing is, D&D was my safe space. So like I'm always wanting to drag people in. That's why I'm like, Dan, you want to come play D&D with us?
I'm down if we can find a time that we can make work with the time difference.
Yeah, that's always the problem with the time difference, though. But we'll talk.
But yeah, I love D&D for sure. Gary Gygax, one of my heroes.
Yeah. So what were those RPGs, video games that you were playing?
Baldur's Gate series. You know, we mentioned that. I think what you've mentioned, you were going to stream the new game again. And I think we talked about that on Zoom, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago?
I think so. Yeah, about me getting back into Baldur's Gate 3, which. And
I made a comment in the chat about Minsk. Do you remember?
Yes.
about miniature giant space hamsters. And
I remember.
And the chat were like, "What?" Minsk is a classic video game character, man. Like, what a game!
He is a rather crazy ranger.
Yeah, so he was a ranger companion that you could recruit in both games, in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. And his animal companion was a miniature giant space hamster, and you just had to accept that was a thing. And
right. I mean, it was just a hamster, but it was a miniature giant space hamster.
So his miniatureness cancelled out his giantness. So he was just. To explain the joke, he was just a normal hamster, and the ranger was crazy, and he he was fixated on this hamster. And it was an equipable item, and if you clicked on it in his inventory, it would come up with a message saying "Minsk looks at you sternly" or something.
Right, you couldn't take it out of his inventory.
Yeah. So it wasn't really a mechanic. It wasn't a real animal companion. It was just.
But it was a very cute inside joke. Baldur's Gate. I've played all the Baldur's Gate games. I can't wait for the third one to be finished.
Yeah, I want to play it for sure. I think I will. I'll find a way to play it.
You know, they have multiplayer in it.
Ooh, maybe we should stream that together. That would be fun.
I am so down for that.
I don't know how I would do it though, because I would probably have to play it on like GeForce or something, because I've got a Mac. So
yeah, I don't know about cross-platform play. So
yeah, I don't know how I'd stream it if I do that. I'd probably have to get a PC, which is probably a bit of an investment.
If it's doable, we'll figure it out. But yeah, I mean, people tell me how much they enjoyed it when I did it just by myself. I think it'd be a blast to multiplayer stream that.
Yeah, I love the lore of D&D. Like it's kind of got a bit of everything, hasn't it? Like it's just taken bits from other high fantasy things, and
but
not necessarily all high fantasy either. It's taken stuff from Lovecraft and all sorts of different places. You know,
even like Steam, the modern. There's a setting for 5th edition called Eberron, which is very steampunk, but it's like instead of steam, it's a little bit more magical, but it's, you know, they have like robot people and steam trains and whatnot. And
yeah, one of my favorite campaign settings is Planescape, which is like now defunct, which is going back to computer games, is one of my favorite video games of all time. What a game. What a game. Man, like the writing in that game is like, it's like a brilliant novel in a game. You know, it's gripping, and it's great role-playing experience as well, because you can play a variety of different characters and get a completely different experience out of that game. And it
mattered the most in that game. Your alignment mattered the most in that game than any other D&D game I've ever played.
Because of the setting, because Planescape is all about that.
Setting, right.
Because it's set in this kind of plane-hopping place where you're in this nexus world in the middle of the plains called... what's the plane that Sigil is in? I don't remember.
I'm sorry?
Which plane is the city of Sigil actually located in? I don't remember.
I think it's just in the astral plane.
Is it? So it's set in this city of gates, and it's like this city where you can hop from, you know, different planes. So you can go to the Hells, or you can go to the Abyss, or you can go to these different places, and you visit several of these different planes in the computer game. And it was written by one of my heroes of the video game industry, Chris Avallone.
Well, and that's another thing people may or may not know about you, is that the majority of your professional life is in the video game industry. Is that correct?
So, sort of, in and out and around the video game industry, yeah. My undergraduate degree, when I was 21 through to 24, was in computer game design, and it was in computer game design with a specialization in story development. So I actually worked quite a bit on narrative in games. It wasn't the sole focus of the degree, but I took creative writing classes as part of that as well. So it was our system here is a little bit different, where we don't have like a major, etc. It's kind of like a narrow field of study where we have a course which has a program which is designed and tailored for the subject that we're taking.
Right, but the fact that you took creative writing courses really resonates with me when I look at the content that you're creating on YouTube. You're like there's your delivery is a part of it, but really what your video is about is that script you're writing.
Yeah, partially, and also I'm leaning on the source material, of course, a little bit.
Sure.
my videos is roughly 1/3 direct from the source material, 1/3 summarizing the source material, and 1/3 analysis. So it's blending those in a understandable way is where the scripting comes in.
Right, but that's the real product that you're putting out over there, and people are responding to it. But it makes sense when you say that you were focused on story development, and really these videos you're making are about story development. They're just about this specific story that yes, it's already been told, but you are making it accessible in a way that just it wasn't accessible to me before. I appreciated it on a very surface level, but the depths that I've to which I can appreciate at least what you've covered in your videos so far, it's on another level. Oh, and Aaron points out that your aesthetics are also beautiful, and that is.
I try. I mean, I have to give full credit to the Tolkien art community, really, for that one. I wouldn't be anywhere without the Tolkien art community, and we're lucky as Tolkien YouTubers to have literally decades worth of art.
People are asking about my T-shirt. Look now, it's Vote Dick Crab 2021, A Song of Madness. He's already out of the running, but it came in the mail yesterday, and I'm like, I love it. It's Sanrixian design, so there you go. There's my T-shirt. Sorry, Dan, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please, what were you saying?
No problem. I've got time for Sanrixian's merchandise, so I probably need to get some stuff from her myself. I don't remember what I was saying.
Yeah, okay. Sorry. I guess that we were talking about the way that your sort of writing classes has influenced what you're doing now on YouTube, because I'm a conversationalist. I am not a writer. We have done nothing scripted on this channel ever.
What about you as a dungeon master? Do you how much do you plan your campaigns in advance? And isn't that a form of writing?
I mean, it is, but I'm more like I'm writing bullet points, and I'm okay, this is when you're going to level up, and this is the monsters you're going to fight, and these are the traps you're going to face, and these are the major story beats. But in the moment, nothing is like planned.
You never know what your players are going to throw at you, do you? So.
That's why, because I used to do it a lot more, which I guess is writing. You're right, but being a good dungeon master, you have to be much more reactive.
Yeah, I mean, as far as writing has always been a passion, and really it all goes back to Tolkien again on some level, because having this background with reading the Tolkien books really, really young and reading them repeatedly, I knew the material incredibly well by the time I got to secondary school, high school. And we studied The Hobbit when I was in what we call year 7, what you would call grade 7. We studied The Hobbit in English class, and I already knew the Lord of the Rings like the back of my hand. And and I remember being asked to write a short story set in Middle Earth, and it was pages and pages of lore about the Nazgul and stuff that I threw in there, and it wasn't stuff that wasn't strictly Hobbit related, and and that was something that sparked my creative juices very early.
Right on.
Writing stories, and as I've gotten older, I've enjoyed academic writing as well.
Tear it up, man. Again, I'm not a writer. I'm a talker, but I really enjoy what you do. And honestly, I without having that talent or ability myself, I can really appreciate it when somebody else does, which is probably why I love what you're doing over there on your channel. I'm going to say that several times. But Reflective Rambling had a great question here. You mentioned that you were a survivor of your studies to make it into the industry. So their question is, has how you interacted with media and fandom assisted / helped you develop professional talents? Ooh, sorry.
Did I say that I was a survivor of my studies? That may have been a Freudian slip, because I've probably given away more than I'm I'm intending to there. So let's get that question on there again, because I
it is a bit of a complicated question.
How you interact with media fandom assisted helped you develop professional talents. So
the way you interact with us, has it helped you develop professionally?
Well, I mean, if you consider what I do on YouTube professional, which it isn't because I'm not earning any money yet, I guess, because I at some point I sure do that, but I certainly, the way I interact with people online, I do always have something at the back of my brain ticking over in terms of interactions that I have when I'm talking to people. And Reflective Rambling is somebody who has followed me since the start of my channel. Actually, she's somebody who leaves some wonderful long comments on my videos. And when I talk to people online about my material, I'm very I'm putting it in the bank for later, and I'm thinking about my next video very much. In terms of my professional life, making games and that kind of thing, I don't know that the way that I engage with fandom is strongly connected. I don't know.
The answer.
I could maybe think of a way that it would apply, but
okay.
No.
Well, I mean, that's fair.
That's a great question.
Yeah, because you never know. Because the way I interacted with fandom definitely affected the development of my own channel, and as you say, would be the same for you and your channel, because you got to start somewhere. I know I was one of the first people to subscribe to your channel, probably one of the first 10 people, I would think.
Oh, sorry to interrupt, but my mom has made a cameo, and now my best friend is in the chat.
Oh yeah,
so
is that Khan Solo?
Khan Solo, yeah.
How you doing, Khan Solo?
That's a pseudonym. He's got several aliases. We call him Tiger.
Okay. Well, nice to meet you, Tiger. I hope you enjoy the show. You probably know about a lot of all this stuff already, but maybe you'll learn something about Dan you don't already know.
Oh, he doesn't know everything about me. I'm a very secretive person.
What are you doing here? I'm going to dig it all out of you. So you went to school to learn to make video games.
I did.
To me, it's almost a little bit surprising that is a thing that people do, but then there's another part of my brain that goes, well, of course it is. You know, it's
a huge industry now.
Everything.
It's a huge industry now, and what I said I've been in and around the games industry in my professional life. I haven't always been working on games. So straight out of university, for a long time I didn't find a job for a year or so, and then my first job out of university was for an augmented reality company, and I was making apps that were, I don't know if you know what augmented reality is.
Oh, yes.
But it's essentially, it's like the best example I think of that people always remember, even if they played it for a day and then uninstalled it, is Pokemon Go. The the augmented reality mode in Pokemon Go, people know what that is. So I was making apps doing that, and a lot of it was very sort of corporate stuff that was to do with medical industry stuff and like all kinds of like different things, just whatever business we could get. So it wasn't terribly glamorous work, but it taught me stuff about programming and taught me stuff about dealing with people in the business world, I suppose.
All in lessons.
And then from there, I did go on to games. So from there, I went to an indie game studio that was run by somebody called Peter Molyneux, who some people out there may know because he's fairly famous in the games industry. He's depending on who you ask, he's kind of infamous. He's the guy who made Populous, Black and White, the Fable series.
Mm-hmm. I have played all of those games.
Theme Park, I think. Think I'm getting that right. He's somebody who's kind of considered an industry kind of luminary, or was at one point, and later on he developed a reputation for over marketing and over hyping his games. So that was my experience in the games industry, was working with somebody who was past their best in some ways.
Oh, well, I mean, the thing is, you're still working in the industry, though.
Yeah. And so we made mobile games, and the idea was good. It was solid, and it was a good product, and I did some good work on it. And it's a game that's got millions and millions of downloads, so millions of people have experienced my work, and it's something I'm still proud of. But
you're not going to tell us what it was, are you?
So it's a game called The Trail.
Okay.
Don't go and download it, because I don't want you to support it. I don't want you to support the game that I worked on. But it was a big budget mobile indie game that we made. It looks really nice. It plays pretty good. It's a bit janky and buggy, but it's a real game. And then I've done other stuff in games since. So
right.
I've been kind of in and out of games in different ways. I worked on a game for McDonald's years ago. It was there's another AR thing that I did. There was a game that I made that was connected with a promotion that they were doing with Happy Meals in Europe. And I've worked on a game last year for a big car manufacturer. So I've done different sort of corporate gamey things, but I haven't really gone back to kind of proper gamer games.
You've done much more than I have. I would love to be the creative director on a video game, but that's only me telling other people who know how to do it. This is what
that's the dream for me. I would like to be in charge. I would like to hire people and direct the flow of traffic in terms of making a game, and take a high level approach to making something. And actually, this sounds maybe overly ostentatious and ambitious and maybe even arrogant, but something that I see as a long-term dream for what I'm doing with my YouTube is, if I can build a big enough audience, is leverage that audience into getting back into games and doing that one day, making a game. But I'm a long way from that right now.
Sure,
it's a long way away. But it's good to have high dreams. Sure,
it gives you something to reach for, and you, as you say, you are building a base of people who come and watch your things, and again, 2,000 subscribers in 9 months. That's fantastic.
It's pretty good. Yeah, it's nothing to sneer at, for sure.
I've been for almost 2 years now, and I'm not even to 1,000 yet. So you're kicking my ass, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, YouTube is a funny thing.
I am not blind to the fact that this is very niche content that I do. Mm-hmm. My feelings don't get hurt about subscriber numbers. I do this because I love doing this conversation. Yeah. I love this, but also the friends that we've made through the chat and through our Slack group, they're, I keep doing this because I love the people that are here every week. When we see Con Solo, when we see Julia Simpson, we're like, those aren't people who are here every week. Everybody else, you're here every week. And if you're new and you want to stick around because we have fun conversations about all kinds of nerdy stuff, great. We'd love to have you. And if you're just here because Dan's here, hey, great. It's nice to meet you. I hope you get to know this nerd a little bit better the same way we are.
I think Khan Solo and Julia Simpson probably know you better than I do. Know me better than you do. Sorry, excuse me.
Yes, that is, I would venture that's true.
Khan Solo, as I said, my best friend. I've known him since I was 4 or 5, something like that. So we're long-term childhood friends. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, we've known each other for a long time. Never been able to get rid of each other. It's just really, he's like my brother. Do I put hashtags on my videos? Only videos that are to do with the Lord of the Rings Amazon show, because they are operating under the hashtag LOTR on Prime.
There you go. Weezy.
There's your answer.
All right.
I use the tag system, the behind-the-scenes tag system that you don't see, which is just for sort of search engine optimization. I use that as well. But in terms of hashtags in titles, that's
okay.
The only one.
I don't normally hashtag my videos either. Every once in a while I have, but usually not.
It's kind of tacky. I only use the hashtag LOTR Prime because the Amazon people are using it, so it seems to make sense.
Right, get some of that Amazon viewership.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to the show for several reasons.
Speaking of Amazon, Amazon Prime, have you heard the good word of The Expanse?
I have. Yeah. So, I watched The Expanse.
Yes, I do.
I think I discovered The Expanse before you did, actually.
That's entirely possible. I've only started watching it, a year and a half ago. But,
definitely. Yeah, I watched it when it was on Netflix here, because it was on Netflix before it was on Amazon Prime in the UK. So going back a few years.
So, favorite character in The Expanse?
Same answer as you, Amos. The guy.
Okay, but why?
Because he, I think John put it really well actually recently when you guys were talking about The Expanse. He's a character who you think is basically, I think it was John was saying that he's a character who you think is basically like Jane in Firefly. He's a thug who's there for the kind of like comedy banter element, and to be the tough guy in the crew and the guy who's kind of a bit more edgy and whatnot. But then there are hints that there's more to him, psychologically speaking, and there's a great deal of depth there in that character. They've clearly thought about kind of neurodiversity when they've been thinking about what they've put into that character. And I can't think of another character that's similar either. I don't think we've seen a character like that in another show. I can't think of another character that I'd compare him to. I say Jane because it's, that's the character he's not like, but that's the character that when you see him the first time you would think of, because it's another space show with another tough guy and an ensemble cast.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I love that character. There's so many good ones though. All the characters are good. I have also in my personal life been spreading the good word of The Expanse. By the way, I've been trying to get various people to watch that. It's an undermarketed show, isn't it?
It is my favorite show on television right now.
Yeah, it's my favorite show certainly since Thrones finished, and I think I like it more than Game of Thrones even. Because I
do too. I can't
not think of how that show declined.
So yeah, I kind of got my intro into fandom and doing all this through the Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire fandom. But this channel has never been about that, even from the beginning. This was about being a place to have friendly conversations about things that were not A Song of Ice and Fire, because so many of my friends were already doing that so well on their own channels.
Yeah, I could never do full-time A Song of Ice and Fire content because there are so many channels that are doing it better than I ever could.
But that's, again, you found your niche.
Yeah, we were talking before we started about A Song of Ice and Fire. I asked you who Dick Trapp was because I couldn't remember. And honestly, amongst your friendship group and on the Slack group and people who watch this show weekly, I'm probably the least knowledgeable person about A Song of Ice and Fire. Honestly.
Except or Potter. Potter might.
Yeah,
be
me or Potter. Yeah. I'm probably the other person who came to your channel through not that fandom, because like I said, came here via a mutual friend who was Lord of the Rings connected. So
right. Well, but it makes sense, like I love Lord of the Rings too, don't get me wrong, and I actually do want to circle back to that here in a second. But what we've talked about up to this point, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, The Expanse, and I'm sure there's other fandoms out there that you like. I don't know if you're a Star Trek or a Star Wars guy or any of that, but like there's plenty of room in the nerd-loving heart for all of that.
I wanted to talk to you about Star Trek because I always spend all my time talking about Tolkien. And actually my answer to the question of when did I first know that I was a nerd could well be Star Trek,
Okay.
Because I also came to that very, very young. The Next Generation came out the year that I was born, but it was delayed in the UK by 2 or 3 years because back then we got things much later than the US did. And so I grew up with Captain Picard and Worf and Data and Riker and that crew. And I rode that wave into Voyager, and I came to DS9 much later. But I certainly loved Star Trek through all my young development, my nerdy development into being the geek that I am. It's the other fandom that's the really big thing in my life that's always been there, actually.
So Lord of the Rings and Star Trek.
Yeah, Trek. Yeah.
Those are both like OG representatives of their specific genres as well. Like,
yeah, that's true.
You don't get much more OG fantasy than Tolkien. Now, Star Trek was not the first.
No, it's not
science fiction,
or like H.G. Wells, but it's on TV. It's one of the originals,
right? As you say, for a television audience, and it was very high-minded for its time. And one of the things Trek has never been one of my top fandoms, but I've always appreciated it for the boundaries it was willing to push with all of its shows.
Yeah, first TV show to have an interracial kiss on screen, at least in the US.
In America, right.
And it in a Cold War era, it put a Russian character on screen in a cast that was predominantly American. And sorry, go ahead.
So yeah, you had our current enemies of the Russians. You had a representative of our most recent enemies in the previous war, a Japanese man. Both of them, bridge crew. He had a bridge officer who was a black woman, and they never addressed that they were there. They were a crew and they did their thing, and it was never like, you're Japanese. No, it was just obvious he was a Japanese character. His name was Sulu. You look at him, the George Takei is Japanese. It's hard not to notice.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Also, Spock, I think, pushes boundaries in some ways as well, because he's another character, very, very different character to Amos in The Expanse, but he's another character who explores the idea of a neurodivergent personality type. And he does it by, alien, kind of metaphor. But he's a character who definitely, you could argue, is an analog for somebody who's potentially on the spectrum.
Data is the same type of character.
Yes.
Which is, that's your original Trek. I know it's not the original series, but you said you came up with
The Data was the Spock of TNG, wasn't he?
Right.
In many ways, and they're similar characters. There was the classic 2-part, I think, season 5 Star Trek episode of Reunification, I think it was called, or maybe it was just called Unification, which was about the Vulcan people and the Romulan people reuniting and reunifying because they used to be one race and then they diverged 1,000 years prior. And there was a wonderful scene where Leonard Nimoy met Brent Spiner. Data met Spock for the first time, and those two characters on screen together, it made that episode an instant memorable classic.
I'll have to go back and watch that one again. As I say, I've always appreciated Trek, but it has never been high on my list. It's pretty far down my personal fandom ladder. All respect to anyone who loves Trek. My mom is a big Trekkie. My little brother Neil is a big Trekkie. So it's in my household. It's in my life. It's just never been, never was mine. The same way something like Star Wars was mine.
Star Wars is something that also was there for me, and it was a big thing. It's just it's a nose behind Star Trek in that it didn't come first, and I connected with it in a different way. And I often say, and this is probably unfair, but I often say that Star Wars is kind of like lowest common denominator of geek fandom because everybody likes Star Wars.
Right. But I liked it back in the 80s when it was just for nerds. Like it was very popular, but then after Return of the Jedi, a couple years later, it was just like, no, that's for nerds now.
And I'm not throwing shade at Star Wars at all. I love Star Wars. I grew up with it too. But the other thing I would probably sound like I'm bashing Star Wars, but I don't mean it that way. But the other thing that I would say about Star Wars is when you look at the movies, and Star Wars is primarily a movie franchise. It's branched out into every other medium, but it started in the movies, and that's where the kind of prime canon Star Wars stuff happens. When you look at the movies, overall, I think there are as many bad Star Wars movies as good ones.
Yeah, but that wasn't true when I became a Star Wars fan.
I know, and for me too. I came to it before the prequels as well, so I've seen that happen over the course of my life. But
yeah. So there was a question. Potter asked, "Did you ever watch Babylon 5? And what were your feelings on it?"
Nope.
Okay.
Never seen that.
I didn't either. It's one of those that I missed. I hear good things, and maybe someday I'll go check it out. But honestly, Disney Plus is going to keep me watching Marvel and Star Wars until the end of time now. So
John is saying bye, Dan, and he's saying that because I said there were as many bad Star Wars movies as good ones, and he thinks they're all good, doesn't he?
Probably. Might have been
I don't know.
The lowest common denominator comment as well.
Maybe, yeah.
Could be. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, those are both, me being snarky for no particular reason. I do love Star Wars. I grew up with it. It was something I bonded with very early on with my friend Tiger, who was here earlier. We used to cover our exercise books at school with doodles and drawings of X-Wings and TIE fighters.
Right.
In primary school, what you would call elementary school, I think.
Right. I mean, I just never got out of it. But again, well, as somebody who knows about story structure and all that stuff, yes, it's space. Yes, there's spaceships, but Star Wars is high fantasy.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
It's not really science fiction.
No, there is no science in Star Wars. There's none.
Correct.
And there is quite a lot that is impossible scientifically speaking.
There are wizards and swords and dragons. I mean, there's space wizards, laser swords, and rancors, but still.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, Trek does. Don't Tiger is saying, "Don't tell them these things, Dan." I'm sorry. So there is no science in Star Wars, and as opposed to other sci-fis that kind of hide their fantasy elements behind a sciencey veneer, like Trek has the concept of technobabble, which I always kind of loved for its like just kind of cheesy, goofy kind of just blatant kind of like nonsensical lowest common denominator. Okay, understood. Yeah, that probably is unfair. I mean, everybody connects with Star Wars in a different way, don't they? So I don't mean to group people in together. What I mean is that everybody loves Star Wars.
Well, here's the thing: when you
And that's not a point against it. That's
no, it's not, and I don't agree. I guess I would say I don't feel like the lowest common denominator thing is an insult. They made something. They made a movie or a series of movies that is intended to appeal to the broadest collection of humans possible. The fact that they were able to do that so well speaks to our commonality as humans as well, about this is a story we can all recognize. So saying that it appeals very broadly is not a bad thing. It means it's maybe one of the most human stories there is, even though it's set in a different galaxy with aliens and laser swords and space wizards.
It's it's something that I think everybody connects with on that level, and I don't mean to throw shade at it. It's probably bad wording to call it a fraction, a maths term. But Star Wars is, the thing about Star Wars is Lucas did all that in an era where it was considered risky to make movies that set in space. It was just first at what it did, and it did what it did so well. And I talk about the movies as well, some of them being not so good. When they're good, they're bloody great.
I agree.
Empire Strikes Back is one of my favorite movies forever.
It is still my favorite movie of all time.
It's solidly in my top 10, probably top 5. But it's hard to pick a favorite movie.
Sure, but I just continue to give it the nod because it's been there the whole time,
Yeah. And it's brilliant. It's a brilliant movie.
Right. I'm seeing some pretty severe allegations being leveled at you in the comment section. Con Solo says that you're his Lando. Seriously, you stole his car. And you think you won it in a bet fair and square. So this demands further explanation. You're on trial now, buddy.
Well, he's just... And neither one of us drive, firstly. We are a kind of a Lando and Han Solo duo.
I love it.
I always thought I was Han, but he's picked the name. Khan Solo is a pseudonym, obviously. Well,
I tell you what, you can be. I'll look at it and be like, his name might be Con Solo, but he's the Lando. You can be Han. As long as I get to be Luke, that's all I really care about.
Yeah, and Lando is a great character. I love his introduction in Empire. He's one of the characters I think elevated that movie to the greatness that it was, actually. Introducing that sort of second string of the cast in that movie. Him and Boba. I think sometimes people overrate Boba a little bit, but he was another character who they brought in that kind of expanded that universe that little bit more.
I'm seeing a lot of love for Empire in the chat.
I love the captain character as well. I can't remember his name. The captain character who is just constantly peeing his pants all the way through that movie because he thinks every time he messes up that Vader is going to telekinetically choke him to death. That guy.
Is it Captain Nita?
Yeah, Nita, I think. That's right, yeah.
Or is it Captain Piet? I can't remember. It's one of those two. Because they're both in the film, but I don't remember which one dies and which one lives. It's been a while since I've seen it.
I really enjoy that character for some reason. I think it's the acting, actually. I think that kind of like thinks that kind of slightly hammy but not too hammy, kind of constantly petrified that he's going to die a horrible, gruesome death. Admiral Piet. Okay.
Yeah, but he is Captain Piet at the beginning of the film. He just gets Battlefield promoted.
Yeah, he gets promoted, doesn't he? Yeah. Hey, that's the Empire. That's how it works.
Yep. Oh,
Yeah, I mean,
I had a question I wanted to ask you much earlier, because you read The Hobbit, or your father read you The Hobbit when you were young, and then you read it yourself almost immediately afterwards, you said.
pretty much, I think, yeah.
Do you have a favorite dwarf that is not Thorin? Or are they all the same person to you in 13 different places?
No, some of them have more personality than others. So Balin is the other one who is quite prominent. He features quite heavily in the movies, and he has quite the fleshed out personality. Bomber is always good for a laugh.
Yeah, I think that's why I like him.
We know, man. There's just no way to respond to it. I think, Balin's probably my favorite character because he.
Oh my God! Hold on, we have to talk about this. First, you don't like Ints, then you don't like dwarves.
She barely likes Tolkien, I think.
I know. What is wrong with you, lady?
she's just an elf person. She just loves the elves.
I guess. Okay. Like, I don't want to. Yeah, right? Thank you, John. Thank you. John, another big Tolkien fan. Can't wait for you guys to do some more collaborating.
Yeah, I want to have John on my channel at some point soon. We did talk about it back when we were doing the live streams over Christmas, but kind of been busy with other things lately. But we'll get to it. Be fun to have a chat with him about something some point soon. Maybe as part of the panel, or maybe just the two of us. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just, John's my. When I'm not doing I Know That Nerd, John's my co-host, so I'm always like, hey, buddy, Tolkien guy right here. You know how I do. I promote my friends.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed working with John on his channel, actually. Going back to Trek, actually, I did say to him a while back that we should do Wrath of Khan together sometime on his channel.
Such a great movie. I'm not sure. So, being not as big a Trek fan as you are, it's hard for me to say what my favorite is. I want to say it's The Undiscovered Country, number 6.
Good choice, solid choice.
But like 2 and 4 are also so good for their own reasons. I like The Search for Spock better than most people.
And yeah, that's the other film that isn't one of the even numbered films, which is still really good, I think.
Right. And there's a part of me that unironically still loves Star Trek V, which is objectively the worst one.
It's the one that Shatner took the helm on and kind of shouldn't have.
That is an excellent way to put it. But there's still part of me that's like, I unironically love this. Yeah, it's not good, but I think
I ironically love it. I don't unironically love it, but I can't talk. I ironically love it because of the cheesiness of it. The line about what does God need with a starship, which everyone remembers. That's a great laugh out loud moment.
The best scene in the whole thing is where somebody says, we made it to this place, and then it pans across each alien as they say the name of their sort of like holy place. It's like, I'm like, this is so, this is not good filmmaking, but I can't help it. I love it. I can't help it.
The retcon of introducing a brother for Spock was kind of odd.
It was. I'm not gonna lie.
He's now got a sister as well, of course, with Discovery. But
I haven't watched Discovery yet. Now that is on the list of something I do want to watch, though. Like, that's higher up than a lot of other things.
Discovery's a weird one because it's kind of.
That's probably why I'll like it more.
In some ways, it's bad Trek, but it's got redeeming qualities that you can't deny, and it's gotten better. It's found its feet in the last season, I think. But there's things that they do badly as well. Like Trek people call it ship porn, which is just basically like glamorous, glossy-looking shots of spaceships, of starships, as they're called in the universe. And they're always in Discovery. They're always really badly lit and really kind of
that's
a lot of the detail is in the background, and then there's bad texture work, and on a CG level, they're just not very well done. What do I think of the J.J. Abrams Star Trek films? The third one is decent, and the first two are Panther Poodoo.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't rewatch those films. The third one's good. It's got some good stuff in it, but it's not a great movie, but it's a good movie.
Right.
But by that time I'd already kind of like disconnected from the cast, so I probably liked it less than I should have.
I liked the first one and the third one, and I appreciated the second one for what they were trying to do. But yeah, it felt flat to me. Number two. The first one I thought was fine. The third one I thought was fine. I didn't love either one of them. But again, I'm not a Trek person, so it's always gonna like. Yeah, it's always going to be like a thing that I don't have. I'm not as invested in it, so.
Yeah, I understand. Helen's asking, is Tarantino still doing a Star Trek movie? It's an interesting question because he did say that he wanted to.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about that in a while, so I would.
No, I haven't. I think probably not because I haven't heard anything about it. But
yeah, I would assume not.
He's kind of a bit of a difficult personality to touch at the moment as well, isn't he? For reasons.
Well, Dan, we've been going for about an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you say we do the mid-roll real quick, and then we'll come back and continue our conversation?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, so this is the part of the video where I say thanks, everyone, for showing up. There's a lot of great folks here today. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe if you're not subscribed. We're on the march to 1,000. So it's a long way to go, but I'd appreciate it. Want to give a shout out to our patrons. You guys keep the lights on around here, so to speak, and we love you for it. So big shout outs to our High Council, which is Lord John Bronsteen the Wise, Sixto Sounds, aka JP the Axe Grinder, who I had the pleasure to go have lunch with today. Not today, 2 days ago. Last Friday we had lunch together. It was very nice to see my old friend. And of course, ridiculous Ed Tollett. I hope you're getting off work right about now, buddy. You usually are. And our High Council is supported by the lords and ladies of the realm, including Lady Leaf Underhill, Aemy Blackfyre, lover of poles, and brand new this week, we've got Ryan Stavka, the Russian quartermaster. Another real life friend of mine who's thanks, buddy. There it is. So thank you, patrons. We love you guys. If you want to become a patron, links down in the description to the Patreon. Also, links to Dan's channel and Twitter are down in the description as well. If you're not following him in those places, you should. He's doing the Voice of Geekdom thing, and that's where, you'll get updates on his videos and whatnot. Speaking of updates on your videos, what have you been working on lately? What's coming up over there on Voice of Geekdom?
Well, we started talking about the Silmarilllion series earlier on. My next chapter, which will be coming at some point in the coming weeks, is chapter 14, which is of Beleriand and its realms, which is the infamous geography chapter, which is the chapter that a lot of people... it's for a lot of readers, it's the final straw where they give up on the book because it's a tedious list of things. It's a list of places basically and descriptions of them and the people that live there, and it's got no story. So it's a chapter that I'm going to have to adapt by creating a fun video with lots of maps and visuals, which is actually probably the way that it should be experienced. I'm probably going to preface the coverage of that chapter by saying, if this is your first read through, feel free to skip this chapter,
right?
Because it doesn't add anything to the story. It's just literally it's there to just explain the lore It's like reading a Wikipedia article or something. So that's next in the Silmarilllion series. I'm working on getting some more guests on the channel in the future. The big thing that's on the horizon, though, is this month is the 25th of March is Tolkien Reading Day, which is it's the anniversary of the in-universe date that the ring was destroyed. March 25th was the date that Frodo and Sam destroyed the One Ring. And in the real world, we celebrate it by reading Tolkien every year. And it's an event that the Tolkien Society puts on. I had recently on the channel, I had a Tolkien scholar called Luke Shelton on, and he was talking about how he was organizing for that event for the Tolkien Society. And I am organizing for the Tolkien YouTubers. So I've banded together with a bunch of the guys and girls, and we're all making videos and we're all releasing simultaneous releases for Tolkien Reading Day. So I'm prepping a video for that.
That is March 25th?
March 25th, that'll be out. And I'm working with a friend of mine who's an illustrator and an animator on that project. So my video is going to be a dramatic reading of the closing pages of the Helm's Deep chapter from The Lord of the Rings. So it's going to be an animated, hopefully animated. We're still working on it and trying to get it all done at the last minute. Kind of dramatic reading of that chapter, which is a lot of people.
I'll watch it as soon as it drops.
A lot of people's favorite, exciting chapter. So I'm looking forward to that coming out. The audio is already done. I'm just waiting on the visuals, and I've got a meeting with my animator tomorrow morning. So it's nervous times trying to get that finished in time at the moment. But everybody in the Tolkien community has taken part. There's going to be videos from people you know, like Helen, and people you don't know. And I've found a couple of new channels in the process of organizing this thing, and I've invited them into the fold. You know, we all have a group chat where we all stay in touch with each other.
Sounds like it's going to be a big day. March 25th.
I'm hoping for good numbers. That's March the 25th. Kelly is saying in the chat March 24th is of no significance. That's completely incorrect, because that is my birthday, which she knows. So that's coming up. But
well, happy early birthday. I know it's still a little ways off, but
but yeah, that's what's coming up for me on the channel.
Well, I'll look forward to that as soon as it drops. Both chapter 14 and the dramatic reading from Helm's Deep. That'd be cool, spicy.
Yeah, I pick up the action. I don't want to spoil it too much, but I've started now, so I'm gonna tell you. I pick up the action in the sequence which is not in the movie, where Aragorn he has a dialogue with the orcs outside the gate. So the orcs are banging on the gate, which is propped up with a barricade and etc. And there's dialogue there, and Aragorn talks directly to the orcs, and so I'm doing orc voices for the video.
Nice.
So I'm doing like a Cockney accent and with some orc dialogue.
Oh man, that's going to be great. It's going to be great.
So it's going to be fun.
Well, I look forward to that. And next week on Here Be Dragons, both Nessie and John will be back. And right now, it looks like we're going to be doing a retro review of the film Highlander.
Nice.
Which is a fantastic film for it's 1987, 88, I can't remember, but great movie. The first Highlander. And then there's also a Highlander TV show, which I hear is really good. I didn't watch it, but a lot of people watched it and enjoyed it. The other Highlander movies, the second one was so bad, the third one pretended like it never happened, and the third one was just okay. But yeah, okay, John is saying 1986, original Highlander. And I think I'm not ready to announce yet because I haven't had a chance to verify with them yet, but I think we're going to have a brand new, never before seen guest on HBD to cover that film. And if not, I've got a backup of somebody who, Anyway, next week, Highlander.
That'll be exciting.
Yeah.
I'm gonna rewatch this week if I have time.
Yeah, I'm gonna rewatch it this week myself.
It's been a long time since I've seen Highlander as well, so
yeah, me too. But Sean Connery, a Scotsman playing a Spaniard, and a Frenchman playing a Scotsman. It's great.
Do any of them have horses? Because
oh my god, I forgot to ask you about that. Okay, for those of you who are not, I mean, I'm sure you get the reference, but Dan was on Nessie's stream about Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which was fantastic fun to watch, by the way. I was there in the chat for that one, and it was a blast. And it started off with the coconuts, and you've still got them.
Yeah.
Real coconuts?
Sorry?
Real coconut halves?
Yeah. I went to the shop that day especially and bought a coconut for the event, hollowed it out, which was tell you what, I don't think I've ever actually hollowed out a coconut before, and it was a pain in the neck.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
I usually just buy a tin, if I want some coconut. But that was a fun stream to do, actually. I've got to say, I'm glad I suggested the topic. I think we're going to do Life of Brian at some point, or we talked about it. We talked about doing it for Easter, but Easter's already over, isn't it?
No. Easter is early April. Hold on, it's in my calendar. I'm just going to check real quick. Somebody in the chat might beat me to it, but
you can probably tell I'm not religious.
April 4th.
Right. Okay. So yeah, so maybe we'll do that if she's not too busy saving lives and whatnot.
Right.
It's also a brilliant movie.
All right. Well, that's the mid-roll. So that's what we've got coming up, and thanks to all our supporters, and we love you guys. But let's get back to talking about Dan and the journey to where you are. So, as you say, it was June or July last year when you started putting videos out.
Yeah, something like that. Was
there a time where, I mean, obviously it's something that you had wanted to do before you did it. How long did you sit on that? I think I want to make videos.
Long time. For a long time, actually, I was considering making I was going to say you nerds, but we nerds call sports ball. I was thinking about making a football related channel for a long time, and football as in soccer.
Right. Whenever anybody who's not American says football, I know what they mean.
Yeah, we mean the sport that makes use of the foot.
Right. You mean football, not hand egg.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's called gridiron football or something, isn't it? I think American football is like the technical kind of old worldy term for it. Anyway, so I was thinking about making a football related channel, and you probably wouldn't be aware of this, but that's a very, very saturated, overly saturated, highly competitive corner of the YouTube market. So I kind of was always reluctant to put much time into planning or doing anything related to football, because it's just something that you'd have to work incredibly hard on and being really lucky to actually see any real success. And maybe it would be something that I could have done just for fun, but I don't know. I never did it anyway, and ultimately that was something that I just never got around to. I started a Lord of the Rings channel mainly because I started appearing on the Clueless Fangirl channel, and I enjoyed it so much and received enough peer pressure that I decided to make my own. So creating a YouTube channel was always something that I thought about, but it was something that kind of happened fairly organically when it happened.
Well, you started off strong with your stuff, and you've been going really great ever since. So, but you do feel like it was I'm really glad you didn't make a channel about football and it soured you on the experience.
I think it would have been a bad idea. I don't think it would have worked. Because the thing is, with football YouTube, you have to upload every day to get the YouTube algorithm to notice you and to get anybody to watch your stuff. And even if you do that, you still have to have some luck, to get anywhere. And what I do now is something that I can take my time on each video, and because it's a small space for the time being, there's new Tolkien channels like every week at the moment because of the Amazon show, but I've got in early enough that I've managed to build an audience, a small audience, but a growing audience. And I can put my time into each video, and I can do weekly videos or bi-weekly videos, or I haven't really worked out a schedule. I should work out a schedule, but
Yeah, I mean, I have sort of staked my claim on this time slot, Sunday nights. This is when I do my thing. And it is the once a week. So it's like it's the weekend. Last hurrah, fun nerd chat before back to the grindstone for another week. But I'm sure I would get much more noticed even if I did it twice a week, I'm sure. But I'm really happy with what I've got. And I would assume that you're happy with the amount of exposure you're getting as well. I mean, did you think 2,000 in 9 months? I bet you didn't.
No, my goal when I started was to get monetized before the show comes out. That was my goal. And it's a funny term, monetized, actually, because my channel is technically monetized, but it's not earning any money yet. Because ad revenue is just almost non-existent. And
right. I think you have to get 3 views to get 1 cent.
So, yeah, something like that. It's crazy. I have made some money. My AdSense account is building up to the point where I'll be able to withdraw funds from it. But it's not all about money anyway. It's
right.
Frankly, it's about building something for the future that I can be proud of, and achieving the kind of goal of building a community and doing justice to the source material in particular is important to me. I mean, I don't want to talk about numbers, really. As I told you before we started.
Okay, I'll break away from that. So what do we... You know what? Let's circle back to Star Trek, and more specifically, the next generation. Do you feel like... Okay, again, when I think of Dan, I think of, Tolkien guy.
Yeah.
But you said you might be almost as much Star Trek guy.
Now, I don't think I am as much of an expert on Star Trek, but I do love it in very much the same way.
Right. But is it TNG or is it DS9? Because I heard you mention both of those.
DS9 is now my favorite.
Okay.
I think it's technically the best show in several ways because it does continuity better. It builds it builds storylines better. It expands the universe. It does world building better. I think the acting is phenomenal in both shows, but and I think the best kind of lead actor in any Star Trek franchise is clearly Patrick Stewart. He's clearly the best actor that's ever worked on Star Trek.
I mean, I'm not going to argue with you on that.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Leonard Nimoy as an actor as well, but I can't look past Patrick Stewart. But DS9, is in many ways is technically better. I bonded with TNG first because it was my childhood, and then DS9 came later, and I rewatched it. I watched. The thing is with DS9, it is because of the way we got it in the UK, it never really took off here because, as I mentioned at the beginning, when I started talking about Trek, we got it several years later, and I think the episodes were not always aired in order, and it was just a bit of a mess the way that it came across. And DS9, you have to watch it every week in order to get it because it's a long-running plot that builds up towards a dramatic climax at the end of the show. And
right, it's got that long narrative.
Yeah, so it's got two kind of narrative plot threads that run throughout the whole run. So it's got the Dominion War, which is like this kind of Cold War that turns into a kind of invasion that is a big kind of military situation that engulfs the entire galaxy and affects everybody. And the Romulans get pulled into it, and the Klingons get pulled into it. And that's when I refer to world building, I'm referring to that plot line. Right. And then you have this kind of like religious plot thread as well with the Bajorans, which is the planet that DS9 is next to, and the like wormhole aliens, the prophets they call them, which are these ethereal aliens that exist outside of time. And the main character, Captain Sisko, is connected with them in a spiritual way. So that you have those two plot threads, and they converge in the final episode.
Yeah, I've been told many times DS9 is the one I would like the best.
Mm-hmm. It is,
and
those people were right.
It's on my list. What can I say? But again, looking at something that's what is it? It's at least 5 seasons. I'm not sure how many it is. But
7.
Okay, well, 7 seasons, hour-long episodes, 20-odd episodes. Like it's a big thing to jump into.
Without ads, they're 40-minute episodes.
Okay. Well, that does knock off a third of the time, but still, there's a lot of content to get through. I probably will at some point, but it ain't gonna be today.
Yeah,
and that's not to say that I've never seen DS9. Like I know most of the characters' names on site, as I would watch it here and there. But again, when you watch it here and there, you do not have the long narrative. You're not even aware of what the threads of it really might even be.
No, and not every episode is tied in with the long-running narrative in quite the same deep way. So they still have one-off, Alien of the Week episodes, and maybe there'll be a side reference to something that's going on in the wider universe and in the long-running plot thread. But then sometimes you'll get like an 8-episode arc that will just be completely advancing the long-running plot.
Right. I think Guilty Undertaker here has got a really good read on the situation. It's less accessible to TNG because not every TNG story is wrapped up by the end of the episode, but most of them are.
Yeah. I mean, if there are long-running plot threads in TNG, they're really easy to just avoid thinking about if you do just dive in. Sometimes they have 2-part episodes, but that's really the only kind of continuity that does, that show. Voyager was the same as well. There is character development that happens in TNG over the course of it, but it's very ambient. It's not deeply interwoven in the plot in the same way.
Right. I mean, that's not to say that characters don't change and grow throughout the course of that show, but yeah, it's not the same as what I understand. And I am a person who is deeply in love with the sort of long arc storytelling. The first TV show I ever loved, and we talked about this when I did I Know That Nerd with Nessie, was this cartoon show called Star Blazers, which was a 1970s Japanese anime style show that I rushed home in the first grade to make sure I was there to watch it, because you couldn't miss it because it was a long form narrative. If you missed this episode, you didn't just miss a week's worth of wacky hijinks. You missed what was going on in the story. And I loved that. And then I got into Robotech. And then, one of my favorite shows to ever come to TV, Game of Thrones, got sucked in the same way. I love the Lord of the Rings trilogy of movies for that same reason. You've got 12-hour chunk of content if you're watching the extended editions, which is the only right way to watch them, of one big, long narrative. Granted, it takes place over the course of a few months, but it's still a very long, involved story, and that's something that's always spoken to me. So DS9 probably is the one that's up my alley.
I think so. Yeah, I think I know you well enough to say that that would be my recommendation out of Star Trek, and not just because it's my favorite, but because I think that is the kind of storytelling that I've noticed that you respond to.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched the original series. I've watched TNG. I've seen some DS9. I've seen Voyager. We covered Picard on the channel last year.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, I remember.
So I mean,
I didn't like Picard. It was disappointing.
I liked it. I liked the first half a lot better than the second half.
I didn't. The pilot didn't grab me, and then it got better, and then it got worse at the end. the ending didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, oh man, it's already almost 5:30, or I'm sorry, 6:30 my time. We've been going for almost an hour and a half. Let's just throw it open to the chat, guys. Dan's here, and he wants to answer your questions that aren't about anything too personal. You know. But yeah, we'll open it up to the folks in the chat. A lot of them kind of know you already.
I want to answer a Peadar question. So
okay, my mind is trained to ignore all of Potter's comments. I mean, Potter, you know we love you, brother, but you are such a professional troll that sometimes I just assume you're being trollish. So Potter, this is your chance to get whatever question. He asked one earlier about something about, would you rather have this or that? And it was talking about a piece of media. So bring that up again, Potter. We'll get to it. Everybody else, I'm sure you've got questions for Dan. But so you're not an American. You are British.
Yes, I am.
From the land of the Angles.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't want to dig in too deep, but you know, what part of the country are you from?
I'm from a county called Essex, which is just to the northeast of London.
Right.
I grew up there. It's a county that's kind of, well, I'd compare it to maybe New Jersey.
Okay.
It's known for its kind of like clubbing scene, and it's like fake tans, and it's kind of it's not known for that much else, really.
Okay, but you grew up in Essex, which I definitely know of. As a person who plays games where you take over the world,
right.
You know, or sometimes they're just set in Europe. Like, yeah, I know where Essex is. I've conquered it many times.
Yeah, and it's part of Anglia. So you're right. I am from the land of the Angles. Even on a local level, you're right about that. And it's, you know, it's a suburban area outside London, basically.
Right.
And I've lived in London for, God, over 10 years now. And I've considered myself a Londoner now.
Right.
Yeah, Helen's agreeing with me. It's the Jersey Shore of the UK. Yeah, exactly.
That's funny. Oh man. Yeah, but let's just sorry, you got me with that one, Helen. It's very funny. But Kelly asked a great question. Dan, what's the best/worst concert you've been to?
So the worst was, do you know who Mos Def is? I know you're not a hip hop
fan. Yes, I do know who Mos Def is.
I saw him live at some point in the 2000s, I think, and he came on stage about 3 a.m, and you know, the warm-up act was on about maybe 11 or something. So we were sitting around or standing around for 3 or 4 hours waiting for him to come on. And when he came on, he had a face like, can I swear? Can I
yes, yes, you can.
He had a face like a dog licking piss off of a nettle, as I say. Like he didn't want to be there, you know. And then he was on stage for about half an hour, and then he left. And it was most he didn't do very many of his own songs either. So he did a lot of, you know, I buy a ticket to see a musician. I want to see them do their own material. I don't want to see a medley of soul songs from different eras. As much as I might appreciate the same music that he does, I want to see him do his hits. and his songs, and he didn't really do that much
Right.
of that. So not a good experience, and I would not recommend anybody to see him again. The best concert I've ever been to. I'm a big hip hop fan. Hip hop is another thing I'm nerdy about, actually.
Oh.
The best concert I've ever been to was The Roots, which
wow. Okay.
you know from being the house band on Jimmy. Is it Jimmy Fallon? It's Jimmy Fallon, isn't it?
Yes, it's Fallon.
And I saw them live, and they were amazing. And it's funny because they're good friends with Mos Def. They've collaborated with him on several songs over the years and whatnot. But they were amazing. Like, I got so much bang for my buck when I saw them live. They did like a 2 to 3 hour set that was just incredible. I saw it at Royal Festival Hall in London, which is an opera house, and they had, the whole group there. They had the saxophone and the drums and the congas and the guitars, and they had good old boy like saxophone soloists playing, like jazz musicians playing as sort of like mid-set intermission support, and they had a beatbox guy who was a guy who plays the flute while he's beatboxing.
Oh wow!
Flute
boxing. I've heard that term before.
Yeah, and so he was one of the intermission artists, and it was just the most amazing experience. So that's probably my favorite, just because it was a great experience. And they're so good live, and there's nothing quite like hip hop done in that way, because it's just a complete musical experience, but it's also hip hop, and it's got that crowd interaction and that kind of head nodding hip hop feel to it. But
yeah, I didn't know you were such a big hip hop fan. Actually, I think maybe you have said that to me in the past, but
yeah, it's not something I've talked about a lot online in the online fan and nerd world.
I do enjoy the hip hop, but I'm sorry. Did I really just say I really did? I really do enjoy hip hop. I like there's some independent rappers that I'm actually quite a big fan of. But yeah, I'm not the same level as you.
You're more of a metalhead, I think, aren't you?
Yes, I am a metalhead.
As I've gotten older, I've grown to like everything. Really, I like all kinds of music.
Me too.
And, really, I just listen to all sorts. And I think another one that's a contender for best actual concert would probably be Radiohead, because I'm a massive Radiohead fan. And the first time I saw them, I was overwhelmed with emotion, because it was just the first time I'd seen them, and I'd always loved them and thought they were a great band.
That's awesome. I am
I can't put
not the biggest fan of Radiohead, but
no.
But art is subjective.
Yes, it is. That was more for emotional reasons, because I was in a foreign country when I saw them the first time, and it was a different kind of experience, because I was away on holiday with friends in a hot romantic place, and it was a great great life experience on top of it being a great band.
That really tracks with me,
in my opinion. So that would rate pretty highly, but acoustically it wasn't the best because it was outdoors.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But live music has an energy all its own. This is a common question for Kelly to ask the guests that come on here, and it's always a great time hearing them go on about, because when you talk about the things you love, that's what we're really here to do. We're here to talk about the things that you specifically love. But Mom is going to wants to know, where were you educated?
So at higher education level, my degree was from the University of East London, which is based. They've got 2 campuses, one in Stratford and one in kind of the Docklands area, which is kind of like an old working class area of London.
I'm sorry, I'm getting trolled for this. Yeah, I'm an old man now. And you set me up for this, Dan. You set me up.
I did no setting up. You did it all yourself.
You're right. We're going to get back to you, but they're really loving that I said the hip hop. Okay, there's a
favorite Spice Girl.
Favorite Spice Girl. I have a favorite.
I think the most talented one is probably Sporty Spice. Well, Mel, she's Mel C, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think she's the most talented one. I think the most attractive one on a purely male level is probably Emma Bunton. So at the age that the Spice Girls were a thing, I guess her.
Okay. Now I'm a Victoria man myself. But you know,
I respect her just as a kind of, she's like a strong woman who's got a good business mind and has created a career after the Spice Girls in a way that the others haven't, I guess. Don't find her all that attractive.
Man, I'm not, Dan, you said hip hop, I said the hip hop, and I'm apparently not going to live this down this stream. Anyway, yeah, now we're talking about the Spice Girls. Yeah.
Not all blonde. God.
Look.
Not all blondes.
Just because you like a woman who is blonde doesn't mean that I like blondes, or I like redheads, or I like, for most of us men who are, straight men, most of us just appreciate women in general.
Yeah, they were all very attractive women, honestly.
Yeah.
Their own way, and I don't want to objectify them in that way. I want to treat them as artists, So, I think I hear this about taste in women quite a lot. I don't have like a body type or a hair type that I gravitate towards particularly.
Right. Okay, this is going to get derailed. Like, now that we're on about women's hair color, and I'm just like, this is a minefield that I don't want to walk through. So,
no, me either. Welcome to, this is Helen's fault. I'm blaming her.
Yeah. So let's just turn around and talk about something nerdy that we haven't talked about yet. Well, you were on Nessie's channel to do a stream about Monty Python takes on Arthurian legend. So which half of that do you feel like was more was it the Monty Python or was it the Arthurian legend?
Well, when we did that stream, we just basically did all the bits, didn't we? We just quoted it all the way through and laughed.
Yes.
We did not talk about much Arthurian legend stuff. I'm not an academically educated, scholarly level consumer of Arthurian legend. I'm not well versed on the subject as perhaps I should be as a Tolkienist, because it's fairly influential to Tolkien.
Sure.
But the Monty Python movies are great movies and classic comedy. I talked about them a lot at the time, and best British band to recommend to the American audience that they would have never have heard of, probably. I mean, that they would have never heard of. I don't know which British band you guys have heard of and which ones you haven't, because I'm not American.
Right. I mean, it's difficult to know what goes outside your own country sometimes.
Yeah, and it's bands that I like.
Kelly, our resident American Anglophile, is saying Duke Spirit, which at least this American has never heard of.
I'll tell you a band that I've seen several times live that I love. That is a British band, a Scottish band actually. That I love and recommend heartily is Mogwai, which is a band that has a nerdy name, which hopefully some of our viewers can appreciate. From a cult classic movie.
Great movie. The first one was great anyway.
They're kind of the first one's great. So they're a post-rock band. It's another genre that I've gravitated towards and went through a spell where I listened to a lot of. Post-rock is a genre that's kind of very instrumental, heavy, loud, strummy guitars and long build-up and kind of epic crescendos. It's very like kind of stoner music, honestly.
Okay.
And that's a genre that I like. Yeah, Mogwai, like in Gremlins. Yeah, exactly. So they're a Scottish band. They're similar to like there's a bunch of Canadian bands that do post rock as well. So if you guys know Explosions in the Sky or like any of those sort of bands. Were you into comic books or graphic novels when you were young? Just curious, since you read Lord of the Rings when you were 8. I got into the like Fox Saturday morning Marvel,
the animated X-Men,
that kind of age, animated X-Men in particular, but also animated Spider-Man and the other stuff. But the X-Men was probably top of the pile. Yeah, it's still one of my favorite cartoons of all time.
But not the comic book medium itself.
Not the comic book medium itself at that age, but later on. I went through a Marvel period between kind of late teens and mid 20s, and I read a lot of Marvel during that time. I never really got into DC that much, apart from Batman.
I mean, we all like what we like. I was never a DC guy either.
I read X-Men. I've read Spider-Man. I read Avengers. I read it all. I used to really like the cosmic stuff, like the Guardians of the Galaxy and all that sort of stuff before it was in the movies. I used to like all those comics quite a lot as well.
Right on. Well, you can't go that far wrong with X-Men and Spider-Man. Aaron would like to know, what is your favorite cuisine? And let's talk food.
Okay.
Since everybody else has been able to eat this whole time, but we're not allowed to eat until it's over. Well, you can eat. I'm not eating on camera.
I have a kind of a preoccupation with West Indian food. I had an ex-girlfriend of mine was Jamaican, and I kind of learned to cook Jamaican food for her. So I still make like ackee and saltfish and jerk chicken and curry goat I made one time. So I do that myself, and also I live in a very like West Indian area of East London, so I go to the Jamaican takeaway quite a bit. If I get takeaway food, that's one of my go-tos.
Right on.
So I have a bit of a kind of a love of that. I think Japanese food and Italian food rate quite highly as well. I
mean, it all sounds really good. It all made me hungry.
Yeah, I know. Sorry. Look, we're living in London, we're really, really spoiled for choice for takeaways, actually. Because everything's just on your doorstep here. It's really good.
Well, we give the people what they want. So if they want to know about your food preferences, that's what we'll give them. Doesn't mean I'm not going to be like, oh, now I want Jamaican jerk chicken.
Can't get good jerk chicken in Vancouver. Toronto, on the other hand, Toronto's got a lot of West Indian.
Yeah.
West Indian. Do I eat the super hot Indian curries? Not really. I do. Yes, I have it. So this is a kind of like Britishism that no one will get. But so our national football team has several different kind of songs that are associated with it, and one of them in the 90s was a song that just went Vindaloo, 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 and Vindaloo is a very hot Indian curry. So for a while, I had a tradition before England played football matches, mostly in tournaments. I wouldn't do it for just a friendly or a qualifier match. But in a tournament match, I would have a Vindaloo before an England game as a good luck charm, which never helped because we always sucked and failed and crashed out of tournaments anyway. So I stopped doing it. But so that was when I would eat Vindaloo.
Yeah, Potter says in the chat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's basically, it's like, it's like drinking kind of paint stripper or something.
No thanks. I mean, I like spicy food, but no.
It's very, very hot.
Yeah, I like spicy. I don't like very, very hot. Mom's got another good question. Mom's got another good question here. What's your favorite European vacation spot or the place that you visited that had the most impact on you?
I have family in Cyprus. Currently they live in the capital of Cyprus, which is Nicosia, which is in the middle of the island, which is a beautiful old kind of old town that's I think it predates a lot of settlements in the world. Honestly, I think it's it's ancient Greek settlement that's been there for hundreds and hundreds of years, and so I go there as often as I can because I've got family there. My cousins from there now live in London, or two out of three of them do. But I love my aunt and uncle that live out there very much.
Well, and Cyprus, Mediterranean climate, island nation, I could see it.
It's a gorgeous place. Worse places. Yeah, they've got great beaches there. The beach resorts are great, and the people. It's a very political country as well. It's a country with a lot of modern history to it as well, because as you probably know, it's divided into two halves. Mm-hmm. I've been to the Turkish northern side, and it's a bit like it's like you're in a Fallout game, because it's like a desert where every few miles there's a brothel or a casino.
Okay. Like playing New Vegas.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a bit of a weird place. I've been to Turkey as well, actually, because that was when I went to Turkey, I went via the Turkish airport in the Turkish side of Cyprus. So Turkey is a beautiful country, but Cyprus is my answer though, because it's
right. It's a great answer. I mean, I've never been to Cyprus, but I would go in a heartbeat.
I recommend it. It's definitely a spot that honestly, weather-wise, it's probably a little bit too hot for my taste. Best weather I've ever experienced in my life.
Texan,
Barcelona. Yeah, true. Yeah. Probably for you, it would be normal.
Yeah. Joe S just popped into the chat and came straight in with a great question. What Tolkien works would you recommend reading after Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, and Silmarillion? Because those are the ones that everybody's going to read first, of course.
Well, first of all, that's the correct order to read them in. So, in my opinion, anyway, Lord of the Rings is the masterwork in most ways, and The Hobbit is, unless you're a child, if you're a child, read The Hobbit first because it's for children. But after the Silmarillion, I would probably say the Leaf with Niggle short story is really, really enjoyable. It's not set in Middle Earth. It's not related to Middle Earth. It's kind of an allegorical short story, but it's one of Tolkien's most interesting works. And it's about his kind of creative process and his relationship with what he calls subcreation. And it's very instructive on who he was as a writer and as a person. And it's wonderfully written, and it's a really great read. So that maybe that. Middle Earth wise, you've got the History of Middle Earth series, which is a 12-part series which kind of breaks down the history of how the books were written and how the universe was created. So the first two are like the original drafts of the Silmarillion. So it starts from the beginning when Tolkien was in his 20s. And then you get kind of volumes. The next volume is poetry. And then you get the drafting process of the Lord of the Rings. So you get early drafts of the Lord of the Rings, and then you get kind of the drafting process of the Silmarillion, which the Silmarillion stuff, the later Silmarillion stuff, is also some of my favorite Tolkien material. Honestly, the History of Middle-earth series is just, it's for Tolkien dorks that want to just, know everything about the universe. So it's not really the next choice. Probably the Great Tales would be the choices that I would go with, because that gives you a flavor of what's in the History of Middle-earth stuff. And also, Children of Húrin is actually a complete story. So that one is, that's probably the next one, because it's the most accessible one out of the three Great Tales.
Children of Húrin.
Yeah, it's the story.
The other three things you just mentioned.
It's the story of Turin Turambar, who's a character in the Silmarillion. So it's a story that you're already familiar with from the Silmarillion, because it's a chapter in that book. But it's expanded into a kind of novelization that's more accessible, and you connect more with the characters, and it's explained better, and it's got more of a fleshed out narrative. So that's the answer, I guess.
Right on. Yeah, I and I understand the question as well, Joe. Like, Tolkien was quite a prolific writer. There's a lot out there that of course you've got the big ones that he's known for, that you said, the first three that you mentioned. But yeah, for those of you that are looking for more, that's Dan's choice anyway. Dan's recommendation.
Yeah, so Leaf with Niggle was a good one, because it's a fairly easy read, and it's quite important because it tells you a lot about who Tolkien was and what he believed and so on. What would be my vehicle of choice? If you could choose anything.
Hold on. We're going to get to that, Jess, because I love this question. But we're just going to pop this up on screen real quick. Helen telling us why she really loves Children of Húrin. No ends with evil dwarves. Yeah. Okay.
Are the dwarves really all that? We're gonna have to talk about this, Helen.
Yeah, I know. Like, I'm gonna have to re-examine my whole friendship.
The dwarves are kind of evil in that storyline, I guess, but they're not evil. They're just kind of
self-interested.
Yeah. Well, it's complicated because the Sindar kind of hunted the dwarves early on in the Silmarillion, because they didn't realize that the dwarves were sentient. So it's they didn't realize that they were a race like they were, and so there's a reason why the dwarves in the Children of Húrin storyline are the way they are, in my opinion. Dwarves are a touchy subject. There was a tweet about this that I saw recently on Twitter about race and Tolkien and the dwarves, actually.
It's interesting you say that, because we had a conversation about it on Zoom 2 nights ago.
Right. So it's a complicated subject, which probably we shouldn't get into. But yeah, the dwarves went through several iterations, and they became more. They became less evil and more sympathetic with the Lord of the Rings, and after the Lord of the Rings, really.
Fair enough. So let's answer Jess's question. Since you don't drive, what would your vehicle of choice be if you could choose anything for traveling? And you know what? Let's get as broad with anything as you want.
My legs. I walk everywhere. Literally, I walk everywhere. If I have to take long journeys, I'd take the train, and otherwise I walk everywhere. I sometimes go on very, very long walks into central London.
I will say this. See, Kate's got the right idea. She would like to travel by giant squirrel. But if you want to continue to walk, why not go with like Iron Man suit? Because that's a solid choice.
So we're going for fantasy answers, are we?
Or I like this one too. Flying carpet. It's good choice.
How about transporter pads from Star Trek? Can instantly beam from A to B. Here's a question for you though. What's
Sure.
your opinion on transporters in Star Trek? Are you being killed and then
Yes.
rebuilt in another location? Is there no continuity between?
I mean, there is something that is transferred there, but like it's not when you. It's like it's memorizing a pattern, destroying that, and then recreating that pattern somewhere else with different molecules and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like, as proof, I point to Thomas Riker.
Right, yeah.
Because that's literally the same person reassembled because of a glitch, reassembled twice.
Yeah. And he's the exact same person. And
yeah.
It's an arbitrary decision to decide which one is the main Riker, isn't it?
Right.
So,
because in theory they both are, which means neither one is, which means
he shows up again in DS9, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Cool. Yeah, the whole storyline with him, where well, I won't spoil it too much actually, but
I just think this is a funny thing to say. I thank you, Guilty Undertaker, for that. I appreciate it. Well, guys, last couple of minutes, last chance to bring up anything. Yeah. Oh, Leaf asks, she wants to read more about Ints. Which Lord of the Ring book has the most? Which Lord of the Rings, besides Lord of the Rings, which book has the most Ints? Sorry, I was going to get there eventually.
They're really only in the Lord of the Rings and the Silmarilllion, but they're only mentioned in the Silmarilllion. So,
well, sorry. You know what? Leaf, write your own Ent fanfic.
I think anyway. I don't think they show up in any poems or anything that I'm aware of, but don't know.
I'm sorry, I misclicked. In the mirror universe, which would your versions be clean shaven? Yes.
They'd have to be, wouldn't they? Yeah, they would. Or maybe mine would just have like a big kind of like handlebar mustache or something.
Yeah.
But certainly yours would have to be like bald and clean shaven.
Yeah, but he'd have a mohawk.
Actually, maybe my mirror universe Dan has got hair. Maybe my mirror
no facial hair.
Yeah.
So we'll answer Joe's question. Who is your favorite elf from the First Age? This is a good question. And does it start with an F? Does his name or her name start with an F?
Most of them do.
Right.
I think the one that I would most like to hang out with and go for a beer with or whatever, maybe Fingolfin. I don't know. Is he? Maybe Finrod also begins with an F as well. Finrod's pretty awesome. Yeah, let's say Finrod actually. Finrod, because he's a good friend to have. You know, he's a reliable, loyal dude who you can depend on. So Finrod.
Yeah, I'm going to take your word for it. All those guys if their name starts with an F, they're all the same guy to me. It's still like.
Yeah.
Okay, except Feanor, because I know who Feanor is now. Like, I figured that one out. Feanor, bad dude.
Yeah, he is. Feanor is a brilliantly written, interesting character who I really love reading. He's a great character, but he's not somebody you want to really spend too much personal time with.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well. I mean, that's a 2-hour stream, Dan, and what a great, fun conversation we had.
It was good. Good. I feel like I've made it now. I've been on. I know that, Dad.
Well, or have I made it because I finally got Dan on my channel?
You've had some much bigger people than me on, for sure.
You're still on the grow. So, and you've got and Amazon is working on a TV show that a lot of eyes are going to be on, and people are going to be coming to you for that sweet second age content.
Mm-hmm.
And I will be among them, and I'll be down there in the comments. I remember Dan back when he had less than 100 subscribers. I think you actually came on whatever we called that, the dragon moot before you started your channel.
Yeah, it was after I'd started doing stuff with Helen for sure, but it was before I started my own channel. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I think I kind of announced that I was starting a channel on that stream, if I remember correctly.
That sounds vaguely familiar. It's been a while now since we did that stream, but yeah.
Yeah, that was fun.
Where, you know what? I wasn't going to take any more questions, but I got to let Helen have this. Dan, what is your favorite ent?
The one in the Two Towers movie who gets his head set on fire and then dunks his head in the water at the end of the movie.
That's my favorite too. Good answer. Okay, so once more, thanks everyone for coming out. This is the end of the stream, so we really appreciate you joining us. Dan, this was a blast. You know, awesome. You're a good friend. You're welcome back anytime to talk about anything you want, except not next week, because my dance card is full next week. You know what I mean? Next week, John and Nessie will be back. We'll be talking Highlander. So go watch Highlander this week. Come back and we'll have a real fun conversation about that movie. And again, I'm going to be. There is somebody who has reached out to me asking about that. So we might have a brand new guest next week.
I'm going to ask you who that is off air in a minute.
Actually, most of you probably wouldn't know them. It was a sort of a chance meeting through Twitter, and some of you can attest to what I'm like on Twitter. I'm like, oh, you want to do the thing? Well, come on. This is how I do. You know, HBD is meant to be inclusive and communal, and so we're just going to keep that ball rolling. And so, yeah, hopefully next week we'll have an interesting new guest to add to the roster. And Dan, you've got a couple of things coming up or in the very near future as well. You want to mention those real quick before we sign off?
Yeah, sure. As I said earlier on, I have got the Silmarilllion Explained series that I've been working on for a long time. That the next chapter of which will be chapter 14. I think actually my next video to be released it'll be a Numenor video, potentially, which will be a breakdown of the geography of Numenor. So I'm kind of doing two geography videos because I'm doing one about Beleriand and one about Numenor. But the big thing on the horizon for Voice of Geekdom is that I'm organising for the Tolkien Reading Day event for the Tolkien YouTubers and all the big channels that you've heard of, like Nerd of the Rings and Men of the West and History of the Ages. All those guys will be taking part. And for my video, I'm working on a Helm's Deep dramatic reading with animated, curated stills that are created by a good friend of mine who I've worked with in my professional life. So really, really talented illustrator and animator. So it's an animated dramatic reading of Helm's Deep video coming.
Right on. 25th. And that'll be the 25th that drops, right?
Yeah, that's right. It'll be midnight GMT.
Okay. Well, I'll be watching it as soon as I get the chance. You know, whatever work will allow, so to speak. But yeah, Dan, it was a blast. You have a lot broader influences than I realized from our just, when we do the Zoom calls and there's 15 of us talking at one time. But this was such a pleasure. Can't wait to have you back again. And now I know, he can talk about more than just Tolkien stuff.
Oh, yeah. The only nerd thing that I don't really do is anime.
Okay, fair enough. I won't call you for the anime stuff.
Yeah.
But it was a good time. Thanks everyone for coming out. I love you all, and we'll see you next week. And until then, peace and be excellent to each other.